Hi, this is Sam. It's 4:13 on April 17th, and this may appear a bit scattered, but I just wanted to make a recording of the process. Attempting to use symbols to tokenize a process where we can manage events that package efforts in an objective manner that allows us to interact with other people who are willing to ascribe to the same concept. So what we're going to do is we define words and then we objectify them and establish them in a textual framework so that we have, for instance, here, word. Once we have the word, we establish it as a point, and that point is encapsulated with the square brackets to objectify it as the context that it's word in itself objectified. And then the process here is going to be to define the word. When we define the word, it's word as a text representation, and we go through a process that we use points. Point A is going to be the general approach to typecast the concept of defining a word, which seeks to know if it already exists. Point B is specifying if it does exist, we review it. If it does not, we define word in a level of specificity. So we go from general to specific to unique, and we represent those points of focus as specifically a point at the center of the canvas. And then we use A to represent a package and standing in relation to that package, where you have approach first, you see the package or object, then you stand. That's the lowercase a. We objectify it. In this case, the focus is word. We're going to define words because they're carriers of meaning. Everything has a source, and the source of all things as we approach it is by way of effort. And effort is packaged as an event in order that it might exist as an objective entity that we call an entity. And then we relate and link things utilizing hyperlinks so that we have a beginning and an end, and then we have that which is within. And in this case, the focus is specifically on word, which will indent, and then the rest of the data represents our interaction with the process to define the word. And what will happen is, in a philosophical sense, they called it the word has pregnancy. It has the pregnancy of the meaning that once you recognize, relate, and know, action or no action reveals will. So a person's will is evidenced by what they will or will not do. So if you act or you don't act, either way, you're revealed by virtue of how you stand in relation to the word. So what we're going to do here is we're going to establish the word as an object that has standing in relation to approach and then looking back. So if we approach it, it is a point, and when we confront it, B point. So if we stand before that object that we call the word, it's B point. So we have standing symbolized as a pipe symbol, space. Then we begin and approach the word, and now we have a word, and we're going to process it through a workflow of seeking to know if it exists, if it does exist. And this whole construct is within the confines of this group, the organization, where we utilize very specific terms and processes to accomplish compliance with regard to the business. But this is more focused on finding or discerning a person's capability and level of awareness, so that we have defined the word, we just use the consensus definition of the word, and then we relate and link it by posting it to a group that we've named, and we name it as a group, which is type. A type called word, which this should be posted to the reconciliation that shows up as a list of words. Those are enumerated, but then the number becomes a label. So the number becomes a name, and in this case, we preface it with the apostrophe and then the the zeros. So the prepending of the zeros establishes that nothing matters, and we're counting those things that we're focused upon. So in this case, the entity of Word is objectified, related and linked, so that we've documented it, it's defined, and then the action of posting it to this grouping establishes our relation with an encounter that seeks to define so that we might know the word. This has been a big problem with people from not even just different cultures and different language base, but also people, especially in English, because they'll say they know, but their actions belie the truth. The truth is they don't know, otherwise they would act. The action reveals. The lack of action also reveals, sometimes more so. So either they do or they do not. And if they did not, that's evidence that they know not. So a lot of this stuff is starting to sound almost in a spiritual sense, and I don't mean it in that vein whatsoever. I'm just trying to find help to accomplish some business tasks that require a lot of people working together, and found a lot of betrayal and a lot of deception, a lot of scammers and frauds. So here we've got the word, we've documented it, and this document is a container for our relation to the word. We process it from beginning to end, and then we stand and review it. It has many different aspects. So I need to find a way to know whether a person knows and applies at least a process of seeking to know. And that process of seeking to know would establish that we orient ourselves with the ultimate base of time. And then from time, we manifest that which matters, and we'll name that material. So we have time and material as our base elements, seeking to know, and then revealing if there's action as a consequence. The problem is if a person doesn't act, we're not interested in the judgment of they don't care or they do care. Their value, this is not a value or a judgment-based construct. It's just to seek to know so that we can either go forward or instruct and give a chance to rectify so that we could progress. And if not, goodbye. We got to get rid of people. And I've hired hundreds of people who practice a deceptive form of, they say they want to work, they say they want to help, but the actions don't support embracing seeking to know. Okay, so in this case, I haven't linked the word to the base of the table where we know that this word exists as an object. If I get the link to it, the act of relating and linking as a whole construct, the object that contains the word, I stand here, and the letter B is actually a graphical representation of standing to the object, with the point being that I approach a word, I define the word, and in the process, it gives me synonyms, antonyms, and we can approach the word from many different angles, aspects, and relations. And then you find, there is the surface, which is represented by the lowercase a. There's the articulation with regard to value, which is the uppercase a, that seeks to establish the point as an ideal, where you relate to the ideal in the construct of the context wherein you approach the word. So here we could say, okay, if you're going to give your word in regard to time and effort, it'll manifest as a schedule. Your schedule will be a virtual representation of your word as a deed. So whether you will or will not, we will use another calendar imposed upon it to show the effort. So if a person's capable of keeping their word, you'll see a correlation between their word and their efforts. And those two constructs reveal integrity. So we're trying to manifest a visual representation of things that are really not easy to show. And I have to preface everything with recognize that we will fail. Nobody can keep their word. Everybody fails, but it's the process of seeking to get better at the capability to either keep word or notify. That's really what we're after. And that's what will engender a continued relation on a basis of truthfulness as opposed to deception. So in here we've got documentation of the word, relation to the group where we've typecast those words that we're defining so that we can use them as names. And when we give name to these other constructs, we relate and link so that they perform an objectification that we could point to and say, here's a workflow, here's relations, here's a whole dynamic that has a way to go back to a singular point. And then that point includes the definition, the use, the example, and the explication of the different relations and paths. And so far we've touched on the word, the name, and the type. Then we relate them so that we have named constructs that are grouped, which would be named types. We'd have typing of names and words, which gives namespace. And then the hope is to migrate downward into tokenization and symbolism so that we can go into the connotations and denotations. Thank you.